Hi, we're introducing a new segment to Daily Airline News, Winging It with Sandy, who's going to give us her perspectives about flight reviews and passenger behavior. Welcome, Sandy.
Hi.
And just to let you know, I've been working with Sandy since about 2009. She is an av geek, fabulous photographer, and we've done loads of assignments together. And she knows all about aeroplanes, loves them to pieces. So
Of
it'll
course
be
I do.
great to get your perspective, Sandy. So today we're
Can't
going to
wait.
kick this off with who's your passenger from hell, and we definitely want to know. We want you to comment and give us your stories. We've all been there. We've buckled up, ready for a peaceful flight, maybe dreaming of that champagne or that beer or whatever. And suddenly there is the dreaded passenger from hell walking towards you, knowing that they're going to sit next to you, and your heart sinks.
Yeah.
Apparently, 40% of air travelers feel a bubbling rage or at least a strong urge to sigh dramatically, thanks to the utter inconsideration of fellow passengers. So, what's your worst flying nightmare? Is it the human bulldozer who reclines into your lap before you've even found your seatbelt? The wild child treating the cabin as an Olympic obstacle course? Or the mystery odor seated right next to you for the next 15 hours? At Winging It with Sandy, we've compiled our top 10 worst passenger types, but we're sure you've got your own horror stories too. Sandy, you're leading off. What are your worst passengers?
All right. So let's kick things off. And this is a fair warning that some of these still really haunt me. So, leading the pack this year is this Smellus Incredibilus, who has triumphed over all other challenges in a mighty wave of aroma. Fun fact, at your altitude, your sense of smell is actually more sensitive, not less. So, yes, that smell really can be worse at 35,000 feet. It was very closely followed by Reclinus Maximus, that mid-seat meal recliner, because nothing says bon appetit like your tray table landing right on your lap.
Yeah, can I just say, if there's turbulence and my drink lands in my shoe because someone's reclining mid-lunch, I'm writing letters, and I've had so many seats reclined into me. And the other problem is you can't put your laptop up or your iPad up to watch a movie or anything like that at all. So
Exactly. And I'm sure there's some kind of etiquette on, when seats should be able to be reclined on long haul flights. How many hours does the flight need to be? Should it be a nighttime flight? I
yeah.
think the one main rule, though, is definitely not when meals are being served.
And it's all about consideration. I mean, daylight flights, you really don't need to recline your seat fully.
Especially
Maybe
short daylight flights.
I know, a few degrees, maybe, but not all the way. So what's
Yeah.
next, Sandy?
All right, so not to be outdone, but we've got the frazzled parent that's letting their little darling have a full flight triathlon of screaming. So, a quick of studies showed that passengers have much more patience for crying babies than for adults. So, sorry,
Um,
recliners, that baby might be annoying, but you could be worse.
yeah, I mean, I think sometimes passengers think that the other 300 people on board are babysitters and they let their kids go rampant. And I've actually been in business class on a particular airline, and the nanny was looking after the children, and the parents were in first class, and they
Oh,
let the kids jump all over the seats, including ours. And they wouldn't do
oh,
anything about it, and the
yeah.
flight attendants wouldn't do anything about it either. So because they didn't want to upset the parents in first class. So
So, I mean,
yeah,
crying babies, you just really can't help that. And I know that kids have lots of ear problems with taking off and landing, but kids that are just not being that are of age enough to do as they're told and just not being told to behave, that's got to be a bit of a pet peeve for me. And,
and
the
some of those
kicking of the seats
kids,
as well.
some of those kids love to kick seats too, don't they?
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
So next up on my list, though, I did have the greedy on carry on luggage person. So usually found lurking around about row 30, but trying to aggressively claim all the overhead space in row 2. Apparently packing light, just a rumor. And a crowd favourite has to be the high and mighty, boarding the plane with all the humility of a rock star on a farewell tour. If a platinum frequent flyer status comes with a crown, they would try to be wearing it.
Yeah, in fact, in America, it's a real problem. It's something that happens very commonly, and that is that passengers who get on first, doesn't matter where they're seated, they dump their bag in the first few rows of what's called first class in America. It's really just premium economy, if you like, but it's called first class. And if you're a first class passenger, you really have to get on first, otherwise your space will be taken, and
Yep.
it really, really is a problem. And there's so many. I've seen some fights over it on American Airlines, and it's
Well,
really a problem.
Well, a big part of the problem is as well is that there's these low cost carriers that are kind of flying to Bali or even across Australia in some cases don't come with checked in luggage on your
No,
tickets. And people don't want to pay the additional money to check luggage, or they're scared to check it because they don't want it to be stolen or lost. So therefore they're all packing, backpacks and handbags and laptop bags and roller bags, but then
no,
you're not allowed to keep anything kind of on your lap. So they're all trying to take up all the overhead space, which is also just probably not weight distribution for the flight itself either. But then I've
no.
had my one backpack that I did travel with on a low cost flight one time. And I actually got a little bit annoyed because the air hostess came up to me and said, "Can you please move your bag and put it under your feet? Because this lady's got two bags and she wants to put one above you." And I kind of went, "Well, that's not really very fair because I paid to have my luggage checked so that I wouldn't have to
Yeah,
put my bag under my seat. Why should I
yeah.
now have to lose my leg room because she hasn't paid for luggage?" So
No
the
way.
flight attendant was kind of like, "Yes, you are absolutely correct," and kind of moved on and asked somebody else. But it is very frustrating.
Oh, look, it's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, and those frames they have where you're supposed to be able to put your bag into this frame that, the size frame. I just never see that being done by anybody. And again, in the United States, they've got not only have they got two bags of stuff, they've also got a whole lot of emotional baggage as well. So they're really laden down, and I'm amazed at what they get away with. I really am. I just
And
I, I just shake my head. Yeah.
And for some extra context as well, the Boeing 737, the original overhead bins they were designed for briefcases, not for free hauls, weekender bags, or six-page luggage sets. So maybe we all need to lower the carry-on expectations, or we need to start using our arm wrestling game.
Well, that's interesting you should mention that, because the original 737, go back to the 60s, it was a hat rack. That's what it was there.
Yeah.
That's the original design, was a hat rack, and then they had, well, we better enclose it. Now we've got the space ones with all the additional about 50% more room, but even that doesn't seem to be enough to handle all the baggage that people bring on with them. So yeah, so um, DVT avoidance is a real problem for me. And they're those people who insist on getting into the aisles and doing stretching exercise. I mean, it's great for circulation, but it's not so great for a person getting a foot in their face while sipping coffee. And the other one, and this is a real problem, is one person I call armrest grabbers, the
Yeah.
seasoned armrest wrestler, I should say. The middle seat technically gets both armrests, by the way, although no one actually honors this rule. So if you're seated in the middle, you get both armrests. That's the payoff for sitting in the middle. But again,
Yes. So
consideration is really
did you know
important.
that there actually are etiquette experts? Yes, that
Yeah.
actually does exist. And they do
Yeah.
generally agree that the middle seat gets both armrests. The window seat should get the wall, the aisle gets the freedom of both. So the
Yeah.
middle seat, terrible view, worst food, the DVT and the yoga getting out of your seat. But apparently and technically, the etiquette experts do say you should be getting both armrests in the middle.
Okay.
There's got
Now,
to be
Sandy,
something good about there's
what's
something
your
good
next
about the
one?
middle seat. All right, so I do have the chatus majoris, and let me just say, if you make eye contact, you are absolutely done for. prepare for a TED talk on, their dog's diet, their cousin's holiday, and yes, my mum is even guilty of this one. Every plane crash in history, always right before the plane is about to take off, and always while there's someone that is scared of flying right within earshot to hear it too.
Another one for you?
Well, drink us oblivious, definitely. A few wines in, and suddenly you're sitting next to someone that's a karaoke finalist.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. And they get pretty
Which which
untidy.
actually which actually kind of then probably leads into one that you've obviously mentioned before to me, the one with the tiny bladder after all the
Yeah,
drinking.
looking crazy. Yeah, my wife and I were traveling back from England on British Airways. This is a few years ago. We're in economy, and the lady on the window had the weakest bladder ever, and she was sitting behind us, and her two friends would not move. So every time she moved to go to the toilet, which seemed to be on the hour, she would have to grab the headrest, which is our headrest, and try and squeeze
Climb
past
over the
her
top.
and grabbing our hair and through the night and waking us up. And I found it extraordinary that her two friends would just not get out of their seats, or better still, she should have got on the aisle if she had a weak bladder. I mean, and that brings me to another one, is window hoggers, I call them. And that's the person who books the window seat and slams the window shade down immediately, goes to sleep and deprives everyone else of the view. And that's during a daylight flight, for heaven's sake. Again, a bit of consideration. People would like to look out. It really improves the experience if you can see out. It helps to combat claustrophobia and also fear of flying if you can see what's going on. So again, it's very, very inconsiderate. So
Well,
Sandy,
honestly, I honestly, with air age up nearly 50% off, like these days, it's actually a miracle that the tray tables don't become weapons mid-flight.
well, you're right. The air rage is up. Experts estimate 40,000 air rage incidents are happening worldwide every year. Two of the worst countries for alcoholism and bad behaviour are actually the United Kingdom and Australia, I hate to say.
And
Um,
I would like to actually dive a little bit deeper sometime about where half of these flights are actually going as well.
yeah, well, one of the things that people who do create these problems should understand, and that is if the captain of the flight decides to let you off, you will be governed by the jurisdiction of where they let you off. So if you're traveling over Asia somewhere and they happen to deposit you in Jakarta, or perhaps they deposit you in Cambodia or Bangkok or somewhere like
I,
that,
I for one know which prison I would prefer to be in.
yeah, well, you don't want to be in an Indonesian prison, let me tell you, and that's where you'll end up.
No.
And also they have much tougher policies in some of these countries than say Australia does or the United Kingdom does. So you better be very careful about what you do in the first place. You shouldn't do it, but if
Yeah.
you get let off, you could be in some serious trouble. And also, the courts are getting tougher now about fining people for diversions. There's been a couple of cases in Australia where the particular person involved had to pay out $50,000 for a diversion, and
Oh
all the
wow. And
related costs that go
I'm
with
sure
it.
travel insurance wouldn't cover that either.
Nope, does not cover that at all. So, there's a real problem. So, viewers, please, what is your personal worst? Smellus Incredibilus, Chaticus Majoris. We really want to know your horror stories in the comments, and we're going to tally them up next week.
Well, I can
Um,
throw in one bonus one for you already, the one that really needs to board the plane first. Even if they're
ah,
seated in, don't board till zone six. As soon as, the first class gets called, they're banging on the door trying to get on the plane because they think it's going to somehow take off without them. That's always a fun
yeah.
one to watch when I'm trying to board. Sometimes you don't need the in-flight entertainment on these planes, just people watching at the boarding can be funny enough.
Look, indeed. In fact, that reminds me of an Air Canada flight, and there was a fight between two passengers in business class, and they were throwing cushions at each other. I couldn't believe it. It was absolutely hilarious. It was all over overhead bin space, and they started hurling cushions at each other. So yeah,
Sometimes you just can't help but laugh, right?
no,
So
indeed,
maybe if
indeed,
people haven't spotted any of these passengers on their flights, they just got lucky this time.
indeed, absolutely. So, viewers, look, thank you very much for tuning in. Please subscribe to us, please like us, and we'll be back very soon with another Winging It with Sandy, and we'll give you the results of our poll. So, Sandy, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Pleasure.